Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel, and welcome to the next episode of the Monster Manual Backward. This was episode 3, The Assassin. So far, in the previous two videos, we've paired the Acolyte with the Priest and the Archmage with the Mage, and you could argue that the Thug does act as the lower, the less powerful version of the assassin, but I use them so completely differently that in my mind they are two different things and deserve different videos. So today we're just talking about the assassin. And let's jump into it with discussing the actual stat block for a second. So, like all of our previous entries, they can be any race, but unlike our previous entries, they can only be any non-good alignment. So we're talking about our neutral alignments and our evil alignment. Something about being a remorseless killer not jiving with being good. So, that's that. They've got a decent armor class at 15, and hit points at 78 or 12d8 plus 24 if you want to roll for them. And, your normal speed of 30 feet for a humanoid. They have bonuses in Dex, Con, and Intelligence of 3, 2, and 1. Saving throws, they're proficient in Dexterity and Intelligence, with trained skills of Acrobatics, Deception, Perception, and Stealth. So everything that you would expect a sneaky, deceiving assassin to have. Interestingly, they have a damage resistance. They're resistant to poison, which, again, makes sense. And they have a decent passive perception. And for languages, they can speak the Thieves' Cant and any two other languages, which the Thieves' Cant is a special rogue language that is a holdout from when every class and alignment had their own language, which goes way back to the early days of the game, but only rogues and druids have those left. And it is a challenge rating 8 on its own. It has a couple abilities. The first one, Assassinate. During its first turn, it has advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn. Any hit that they score is a critical hit. Any hit that they score against a surprised creature. So it's going to try and get surprised rounds, or start at a fight stealthing, and then striking out from stealth. Evasion, basically if it has to make a dex save to take only half damage, it takes no damage if it succeeds, and half damage if it fails, which is the normal rogue ability. And then it also has sneak attack, where it does an extra 14 or 4d6 damage when it hits a target and has advantage on the roll, or when the target is within 5 feet of an enemy an ally of the assassin, rather, that isn't incapacitated, and the assassin doesn't have disadvantage on the attack roll. So, yeah, just your rogue sneak attack. And then it can either make 2 short sword attacks, which do an okay amount of damage, piercing, but then you have to make a fairly low-ish Constitution saving throw, or take a whole bunch more poison damage. Or it also has a light crossbow that, both attacks of +6 to hit, so there's a decent. You're probably gonna take those hits. It also has the Constitution saving throw, so basically, the assassin does really well if you can't do a DC 15 con saving throw. Trained in the use of poison, assassins are remorseless killers who work for nobles, guildmasters, sovereigns, and anyone else who can afford them. So let's now move into how you would use an assassin. But real quick, something to note, both dwarves and stout halflings have advantage on poison saving throws and have resistance to poison. So that's something you're going to think about if you have one or both of those in your party. But going on again to how you would use them, I would suggest the following. If the players have run afoul of a large, non-good entity, whether it be a nobleman or some sort of institution, they might hire an assassin. Or maybe the big bad of your campaign, you think it's time for them to start appearing on the periphery. And how they do that is they send an assassin. I think I would make all of my assassins be their own minor NPC. I'd give them a name. Definitely a race, because again, I've said this in all 3 videos now, but with those humanoid stat blocks, the best way to start tweaking them and making them even better and more unique is to give them a race and add in racial traits. It's also really easy to do. So give them a race, give them a gender, give them a name, maybe a motivation. It depends. It depends on what kind of encounter you're planning on running. Is it just going to be combat? Are they going to meet the assassin once or twice as the assassin tries to, gather information about the party and size up their opponents before striking? Do you think your group is going to let the assassin survive and try to either turn it against the person who hired them, or otherwise try to make it at least a neutral party, if not an outright ally? And then just the more, like all NPCs, the more they're going to show up in your game, the more you're going to have to create a personality around them. But what I would suggest how you would play an assassin is sneaky, straightforward, a knife in the back sort of thing. And remember, they have a +9 to their stealth rolls. It's really unlikely that your party is going to see them, especially because unless they're actively looking, they're just going to use their passive perception, and passive perception rarely goes above about 14 or 15 in my experience. I don't generally have players that have high passive perception. So remember that. If they're not actively looking, use passive perception. And the assassin has a really good chance of beating everyone's passive perception. So he can or she can show up pretty much anywhere. They're trained in acrobatics. You can say, they jump up to the second story and sneak in through a window, and that's how they get into the inn room where the party is sleeping. And if you do that, if you have any encounter, but the assassin particularly, attack while your party is sleeping, remember, if anyone is wearing heavy armor, they get a level of exhaustion for trying to sleep in it, and it takes 10 minutes, which is 60 rounds. That is 6-0 to put on armor. No, sorry. 6 seconds in each round. There are 10 rounds in a minute. That's 100 rounds. That is 100 rounds. Did my math wrong a little bit there. But you're not going to have a fight where one of your party members starts not in his armor and ends the fight in his armor. That's just, if it's heavy armor, that's not going to happen. So they're going to have to fight with a reduced armor class. And since most people who have high armor don't have high dexterity, they're going to have a really low armor class, most likely. I wouldn't expect to see it much higher than 12, which gives the assassin a 70% chance of hitting with any given attack, and then they've got to make con saves on top of that. Striking in the middle of the night, the assassin can take out the tanks really, really quickly. And also, something to remember, because assassins are deadly and they have no morals, if a creature is incapacitated, so taken down, not incapacitated, taken down to 0 hit points, any attack made from basically any melee attack is going to automatically count as a critical hit, and any critical hits count as 2 failed death saving throws, which means an assassin, if he uses both of his hits against a party member who is at 0 hit points, he kills them. Just straight up kills them. And that is exactly something that an assassin would do. The whole goal is to kill party members. You can make that not true for just about any other monster. Taken a prisoner or taken back to the lair to be food later, not realizing you didn't quite finish them off. That is all within the realm of possibility for most monsters. I wouldn't have that for assassins. I would have their goal to be to kill specifically one or more members of the party. So, if you want to use assassins, I would definitely say be ready to kill your characters, your PCs. Well, not the players, but you know what I mean. And that's something that a lot of GMs aren't really comfortable with. And that includes me. I'm not super comfortable killing characters, but I'm also, if that's where the narrative goes, that's where the narrative goes. So that's sort of that. Yeah, just use assassins as some greater entity has been pissed off by the players to the point where they're willing to shell out a decent amount of money, because I imagine the assassin stat block in the monster manual costs a lot of money, like tens or hundreds of gold. And that's another video I want to do sometime. The economy of D&D, and how adventurers they operate on money scales that kingdoms operate on. Like, they have wealth comparable to nations. But that's neither here nor there. So those assassins cost money, so these organizations have to be so... They want the players out of the picture so bad they're willing to put down a sizable chunk of money to see it happen. And so basically the players have the encounter or encounters, get a clue towards, well, where'd he come from? Who hired him? Because that should occur to the characters pretty quickly, is this person isn't here to kill us for personal reasons. This is a really impersonal attack. He was hired by someone. So then they go figure out, well, who hired them, and then one or more adventures where they try and figure it out. And I think depending on if it's your big bad, they shouldn't find out in at least an approvable way until you go have your climactic battle, the climax of the campaign. If it's just some sort of background organization, or just that exists and it helps make your world feel more real, or if it's consequences and you're just like, hey, remember guys, you can't go pissing off everyone and expect nothing to happen. In that case, I can see one, maybe two adventures where they unravel who it is and then they deal with them. But that's really all on the assassin. So just to sort of summarize once more, it's an encounter or two, or maybe a few more, that you can sprinkle in that leads to a plot thread. And that's how I would use the assassin. But make sure to tune in again on March 28th for the next episode, this time dealing with the bandit. And make sure to tune in tomorrow, where we start the second dungeon